Hello, everybody. Happy Sunday. Oh, you get to see me in a beautiful rainbow. Let me turn on some music.
I found connected to. Sorry, Matt, but so.
Nice. Hello. Good rising. What it do, Ra? Hello, I hope you've had a good weekend.
Oh, my bad.
Yo, you're good. You do it. I would love to put on music.
This is like my feels right here. I love this song.
I'm doing well. How are you?
You talking in the
What's
chat?
been
You talking to
in the
me?
chat? Yeah. What's
Yeah.
been the highlight of your weekend? And also, Ra, what's been the highlight of your weekend?
Me? The highlight of my weekend. I got a very uplifting message from a friend. Just about trusting myself and just being destined for great things. Sometimes I feel this sort of force that's kind of pushing me in a lot of different directions, but towards just growth. With that comes change of where I'm at. So I'm kind of like grappling with those thoughts. But to just get the sort of support that I've gotten from loved ones and friends are just like, yo, don't overthink it. You're right. That and I just saw this 11-year-old girl, young black queen, just wrote a book about, it's called My First Protest.
Amazing. Holy shit.
And yeah, so I just saw that probably like an hour ago, and it's just extremely uplifting to sort of see our young people using their voices.
That's amazing. I've been reading. Do you know that I've been reading your book in my morning groundings?
Oh, really?
Yes. I've been reading your book as part of my morning groundings just because I wanted to read it. Like I wanted to do a thing with everybody in the space. And then I just got the book. So I'm like, let me read it for folks. Cause I also realized I love to read aloud. That's like one of my favorite things. Um, and it's actually been very inspirational for some of the workshops that I've been having. Cause I've been having people draft, I was like, am I gonna keep it a secret because it's a tool? No, hell no. So like draft a version of your story that you will be telling to your inner child, and then draft a version of your story from the perspective of your higher self. And so both of those have come up. And yesterday Joelle attended, and it was just Joelle's presence is amazing, and they're such an incredible writer. And just hearing them speak and having read your story so far, it's like we really have to tell these powerful stories of ourselves and for our children and for our future from our perspective that is like up to date. Because honestly, I need Cinderella to take a break because that story don't resonate. Okay, like can we don't even live in castles no more. Like the ball, it's quarantine times. What you talking about? So it's definitely time to like update all these stories, and the voices that are being centered are so beautiful. So this 11-year-old with a protest story, like right, because that's what we need to talk about.
So it's just like, again, it's so vital for the communication across generations that the voices are amplified.
Mm-hmm.
I think at times there's this like young people are gonna do it. I think the hopes is that as the young people are rising, I hope the sort of adults or the elders are also taking notice to block parts of their voices that
Right.
press, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think what's really huge, hey Kellyanne, I think is exactly what you're saying, this like discrepancy of like, oh, the older generations being like, yeah, it's up to y'all doing it, and even younger people be like, oh, it's up to y'all doing it, and it's always on the future to be doing the things. And yeah, obviously. And also, like, how are we also facilitating that space and supporting them to step into the highest possible point of their future? I think about what just popped into my head is frats. And I think about something that always confused me was about hazing and like why they would haze each other to get into the thing. Like, why do we need to get everybody on the same page in that way versus how can we incorporate because we shouldn't just need people's bodies to continue the movement. It should be like taking their ideas, right, and taking their strategies and all of that. So but a lot of things would have to shift for that. I'm just thinking about school in general. A lot of the time, school is not led by students; it's led by crusty old ass people who want to maintain the status quo.
Yo, and it's also, see, what you just said kind of resonates to what I'm thinking about too. Just of like this, like the people who may go into teach that may be a little bit disconnected. I've been thinking about wants versus needs and thinking about that in my language. Yeah, like I sometimes hear like colleagues and teachers be like, I want these kids to do this, or I want them to do that. And it's like, you could want that, but it's also like, you got to make sure you differentiate between wants and needs, because you have what you need. You may have what you need in terms of the necessities to just live. You may want X, Y, and Z. It's important to recognize that as a want. And once you recognize that as a want, there's a slight chance that that want may not happen the way that you want it to. So it's just like, whether it's someone's expectation of you or someone's outlook of you, or in this case, to what you were talking about, like a teacher wanting that approval or wanting the education to look like a certain thing for their students. Like, you got what you need in terms of their presence. The wants that you gotta understand that you're dealing with other humans, and the speed at which what you may want to happen may not happen in the speed that you want, but like
yes. Wow. The patience that's required for that, and like the ability to, I think, not take things personal. And those are like two huge skills that we have lost or it has not been emphasized. So it's like dwindling.
Yeah. It's that ability, like, I feel like when you take things personally, it's just like, see this. I have a thought right now because I'm thinking about as well. I think as we're closing the year, but I've just been reflecting a lot too. Is I don't really want to hold any grudges with people. It's like, yo, I could be at peace with it and just keep it pushing, because I think about the suffering that comes with holding on to certain things and taking those things personally to a degree. When you allow it to, like, again, it varies on what it is and things like that, but it's like you suffer a lot by holding on to that personal thing that has happened. It's like, and you want that accountability, you want that apology from X, Y, and Z, but it's also like, how do you sort of not like remove the personalization out of it and not allow it to sort of trap you?
As you're saying that, I was just looking up. I remember this quote from Buddha, which is holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. Yeah.
Drinking poison and the other person to die.
Yeah. Yeah, this grudge, it's crazy to think about forgiveness. Okay, wait, before we get into this, let's do an introduction of ourselves. Yes. And also like our game plan for the day.
Alright.
Yeah. You start.
First.
Oh, I start? Okay. So my name is Gary. My pronouns are they, daddy, D-A-D-D, I, E. And Really, I was thinking about changing it to just I because I'm Gary with an I and then Daddy with an I. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, um, I'm a warrior, social emotional strategist, facilitator, educator. I've been doing a lot of workshops this week, and I have all my days booked up doing at least 2 events a day from now until the end of December. So I'm really happy about that because it's the first time I've made it a commitment that doesn't feel like I'm doing it for a flex or like trying to even flex on myself or like push myself to do but this is just what feels I feel called to do it. So it's like nice to be following in that. So Daddy Talks! Yes! Thank you, Kellyanne.
Yo, and to what you just said, your introduction to what you just said in terms of the events, I'm so excited for you. And here's a quote I heard from this chat I was listening to. But if you're confident in what you do, you don't have to hoard it. So it's kind of,
Mm.
it's like, yo, like, do your thing. And people might have X, Y, and Z to say about it, but it could just not be there. And the world is so thankful for your presence. And just keep shining your light. So I'm excited.
Thank you.
So me, Ra writes, I am a facilitator. I am just a compassionate leader, an author. I'm still getting used to that. I'm just a creative and a community builder. I just aspire to bring people together and bring together honest and authentic conversations to allow others to live in their truth.
And you have been doing the damn thing. You really, the amount of times that I bring up your questions in everyday conversation, like often, more than once a day, and at least like every day once, it's been really, really powerful. I've been really enjoying our time to connect and think. And so I like the frame, especially of how will you respond to what gets revealed to you. You really out here with the words, and they
But
really sit. Like I've been also thinking so much about your story. Like I said, I really use it to ground a lot of my or one of my workshops in regards to rewriting our stories.
again, I think the idea, and I think about creatives, again, those with the intentions to do so, is just like, I hope that in stepping into my truth and getting out of my own head, that I encourage others to theirs and just step into theirs. And it's one of those things to just be a practitioner of what it is that you speak in. Because again, if you ask and you saying all these things and you're not keeping that level of consistency in terms of doing it, then it's kind of just like it confuses people.
Mm-hmm.
Leaves people,
And it confuses yourself,
yeah, because you start
and that's when you feel off.
and you start lying to yourself, and then the things get blurred, then you have no idea which one is real, and then you have no problem not keeping your word to other people if you can't do that to yourself.
This is just it's so crazy how simple it is and how sometimes it feels challenging in practice depending on how you have been leading your life and how the people around you have been leading your life and the examples around you that you see too, and also what you personally you feel about yourself. And I think this thing of self-esteem and self-confidence is such an interesting trap almost. I remember looking up self-confidence. Confidence comes from the Latin confidere, which is like fidere is to believe or to trust. Con is with. So like to entrust with, right? To trust with. So to have self-confidence is to be able to trust yourself. And what is trust? It's like being able to depend on that, right? So if I say I'm gonna do a thing, then I'm gonna do a thing. I can trust you to have my back. So if you can't even trust yourself to have your back, of course, your integrity is off. Kellyanne has from the Four Agreements, be impeccable with your word, because you got to do that. And I think people, and myself very much included, haven't realized how damaging it really can be to act out of line with your word. And I think you and I speak a lot about adults and how when we grew up, what was it like experiencing lies around us? Because if your parents or caretakers or the people around you or the world around you really lied to you often, it became like common to have this dissonance. So it makes sense that you will now carry that on throughout your life because nobody's word really meant nothing to nobody. So of course it still means like we have to come to define our own things. That's what I've really been thinking about. So
It's like be yourself, but you see constant examples of conformity around you. As a kid, you like what? Like be yourself, but like I don't see nobody doing that. So what does that even mean? And then like in regards to being impeccable with your own word and the damage that comes with not sticking to it, it's just then it just becomes why did you say it?
Why did you say it?
Why did you say it if you had no plans on doing it? You know?
Right.
It's just like
right.
it just don't say it. Like it could just be that, you know, because once it's released into the world and it's spoken from you, it's hello. It's spoken from you, then it's kind of just like, why did you say that then?
Why did you say that? And I think that's the part that we really have to assess. Because an example that I think whenever we think about people not being with their word, we think about like straight up lying, like people, hey there, who be wilding, right? Who just like really out of the box say like a crazy lie. But I'm talking, the example that often comes up for me is like saying you're going to meet somebody and then not doing so. Or like, or somebody asks you, do you want to talk later? Do you want to hang out? Can I have your number? Right? And instead of just being like, no. We'd be like, oh yeah, or like, oh yeah. Or the worst is when you're like, yeah, and then you don't show up or you cancel. And it's like, I think what it is that we don't often take enough time or give ourselves enough time to connect with what the person is saying, really think about how we feel about it, assess how it fits into like our vision and like how we're trying to lead our life before just saying yes to another person. Because we often just want to say yes to another person because we don't want to give them the no. That's what I kind of feel about it. I know my personal experience and what I have witnessed in a lot of people. It's just like we don't want to be honest about our word because we don't know. Actually, I wrote this down. I was like, I think a big part of the reason that we don't like to, I've been writing on Post-its. It has not been a good idea because I can't keep track. But I wrote something along the lines of like the reason we don't want to tell people our truth or tell people our truth is we say it's because of a fear of rejection, which is like, yes, but I think it's more so. And what's something that, and I came to this with your thinking about your question is like, I think really when we speak in our truth, a new thing will be revealed to us. Right. And then a new set of choices will then be presented to us. And I think we sometimes don't want to have to make those choices, a new set of choices. And so we choose to not do it, period. Like, I'm just going to avoid having to do none of that and continue to live in a delusion, right? Because if you're not being honest, you living in a lie. So just something I was thinking about. I thought about one of my good friends who, when we first saw the video, or they had seen the video of Biden touching on kids. And then they were saying how their mom was going to vote. This is prior to the election. And they were like, yeah, but I don't really want to show my mom that video because I'm scared of what she will say when I show her, which is kind of like, I'm still going to vote for him anyway. And I was like, right. And you don't want that confirmation to know that this is what your mother has said. Because now you know how she's showing up, and that upsets us. So that's kind of just, I was thinking about that. In regards to like not being impeccable with our word or giving our word haphazardly.
And that's dangerous.
Also not knowing how much we matter, period. Because that's why you be saying that. I said, and also not knowing how much we matter, period. That's why you be talking out your ass. If you knew how much your word mattered, then I'm sure we would all
be a little bit more thoughtful with our words, dare I say.
Yeah.
Be
thoughtful. Absolutely. Yes.
All right. So, with this month, with this year, I think it's a lot to unpack. And just thank you for your time travel November as well. It's like I be observing, like I'm doing my own thing. So at times I'm not able to get into your workshops, but I see and I respect from afar the work that you're looking to just do and provide. And this year just been a lot in terms of just, you know, it's a lot in so many different ways, and but there's also what I've also seen though too is this rise of a level of potency in people, a sense of like recognizing what's already within, but just have it within you as well. It's like, man, I gotta figure X, Y, and Z out, and then you like, oh, I was able to organically ask that question or bring about that idea. It's just it's channeling a lot of results.
Say that again?
I said it's channeling a lot of resourcefulness and just I don't know. It's just
I had a question for you when you said that. What are like two new resources that you like with not new, right? Because they've been within yourself that you have been using more in your life.
Two new resources I've been using more. I think I've been using just the power of my own intuition. Really being intentional about using that, because it's kind of and thank you to you for the intuitive dance, as I'm still uncoding that. It's recognizing the ability to just stop before you make a certain decision or a certain choice. That's like a choice, because it's like who's saying you have to immediately respond to that text message? Nobody.
Capitalism. Right, nobody, just pressure.
No, you could take your time and really be thoughtful, because you want your word to mean something. When you rush and you feel, and then you're frustrated when it's not, you feel like it's not you. So I would say that's a resource. And then another resource is I've been watching a lot of just inspirational folks from YouTube, you know, whether that's the Hustles, whether that's the Malcolm X's, the James Baldwin's, just tapping into those archives and really listening to the voices. And those resources, I think, remind me that the job is not done. That, you know, again, it's a journey, not a particular destination in terms of empowering our people. And to see how, like, I think about the present time in which some of these sort of leaders have been speaking in history, and the amount of sacrifice that came with even releasing their voice into the world. They could lose their life from just from the heart and looking at things in front of them. So those are two resources. Yeah. What about you?
I'm grabbing my charger. Two resources that I have been using or gained more awareness around. I think I've really been leaning into my writing, and realizing I've always known that's been a tool for me and a really important resource for me. I think because I have so many thoughts constantly that, like, even because I do mindfulness sometimes, but I find that what feels, because there's different, different modalities of different things, but journaling often feels, I feel so aligned when I'm doing it, like able to get my thoughts together. And then because I'm so wordy and like long and verbose and be talking, like when I write it out and read it back, sometimes I'll just get a snappy little, and I'm like, oh, there's an aphorism, a saying for myself. So that's something I've been using. Just like the power of my voice through written word, especially. And a resource that I recently got back into is altars. Like arranging my altar to be a reflection of the life I'm crafting for myself. and like what I want to be on my mind. What's really cool is I have an MRI of my brain, like a actual picture. So like I put it on my altar and then put stuff on it. So literally put stuff on my mind. So um that's been a cool resource. Magic and stuff.
Alright. Do we wanna start with this conversation and get into
Yeah.
that quote
I
that
was actually beginning to type because I was like, what do we want to call it? Right? I have end of the year check-in and a conversation, or I was writing releasing grudges. I feel like that's a good way to kind of frame it because you were speaking on that earlier, and I think what we're talking about today kind of ties into it.
and it talks about we're thinking so much about release because it's like, yo, like, why do you have to hold on to these things?
Right.
What? How does it
What
serve?
do you gain? How does it? Yeah.
How does it serve you to hold on to these things? But then
Right.
the questions that sometimes are afraid to be asked is, what does life look like without holding on to this thing? And I think it's almost like we don't even want to give ourselves permission to imagine life like that because that might be, holding on to it. Um, I think a lot about that. It's hard because it's like the mental switch to like let go. You have to like move like someone who's let go.
Yeah.
Like I have to sort of really process why is it that it affected you in the way that it has.
Right.
And something else that I've been thinking about is like releasing grudges and just like with certain things. I realized the importance of just having a conversation directly with about it, because
Yeah.
I had a little thing with like my squash program and wasn't, because they moving kind of different,
Mhm.
and it was like resistance to even want to share the book with them. But then I realized that I needed to make sure that I was talking with the person that I felt disappointed in. Let me
Mm.
go address this person directly rather than hold on to this and potentially negatively not share this vision with these young ones because of my feelings toward about another person's decisions. It's like, nah, if I could just step to you directly and we could talk about it and just see where your head is at and where your head was at when you was making X, Y, and Z decision, that's moving against all that we know. In terms of like, let's come together, let's talk. Like, I'm gonna confront this rather than do actions that kind of deflect and push it away. At least giving myself that sort of level of peace of like, even if this doesn't work out the way that I want, I've gone forth as a person instead of just assuming.
Mm.
And that's hard. That's hard. Like it's like, I'm going to have this conversation. I already scheduled it and all that, but it's like you're like, ooh, like I don't know how this is gonna go, and it's like
Mhm.
you just going with the energy that I'm gonna just go in and see where it goes. I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna be transparent about how I felt when certain decisions were made, but it's that authenticity, it's that sincerity, and they may not, they may feel away, but they got at least respect that I'm coming to them in this form. So
Mm.
it's
I'm
like
digesting your statements.
that level of just burden, that weight that you hold on your shoulders from just being tight at somebody. It's like, yo, that's extra weight on your shoulders. I don't want that. Like, yo, I want to be moving. Like, I want to do my thing.
Mm.
And it's like, what do I have to do in order to do that? Ooh, I gotta have that. Otherwise, then you just spend time thinking about why it makes you so tight. It's like, nah, let me just. But you
Yes.
also that other person or people that you have the grudges with also want to meet in that space. But you got at least be the person to initiate that if it's something that you need to clear your aura, to clear what it is for you.
Yes. Yes to everything. I'm thinking, like, as you're speaking, there's so many things that are just firing off in my head about personally, like my personal stuff that's happening. And also, I'm having I have a live series on Thursday with with my friend Hallie, who I did City Year with, and she was talking about the importance of grace. I think you would love Hallie. I would love for y'all to have a beautiful conversation about leadership, because when we speak compassionate leaders, I think that she would define herself, or I would define her as a leader, one who leads with grace. And you're a compassionate leader, and I think they're very, closely tied. But for her, the way she defined grace, which was so powerful, is like the removal of this pressure of perfectionism when you show up, and instead allowing you to come in your truth and saying your intentions. And so she was saying, and her, like, a lot of our conversations around City Year, she was asking me what the beef was, like what was most of the pain that I experienced in City Year, and it was team dynamics, and it was a lot of the time just like these interpersonal problems that would get in the way of this overall mission that we have. City Year's goal is to end the school to prison pipeline, is to serve these students, right, to serve the community, and yet because of our interpersonal problem, and now because things happen, so like conflicts happen, they're not resolved in the way that we want, or they're handled however they're mishandled, all these things, and then we think that's a final conversation, and we start making judgments and assumptions and then judgments off of people, and then move with those things that we have solidified within ourselves without wanting to have a conversation about it further, which now takes away from our overall mission. And I think what you're speaking about, I'm thinking about grace, because grace is really this ability to like come and be like, yo, I don't got the answers. All I'm telling you though is that like this is painful for me, or this is how I'm feeling here. And I think it's so much sometimes it's so much to share. We feel like it's so much to share our feelings with other people. And it's also based, I think, a lot of experiences that that a lot of us have had of people responding poorly to our feelings. But I'm thinking also about, when I think of grace too, I'm thinking also, how are you saying it, right? Because I think a lot of the time when we want to speak to somebody, because we don't know how to handle rage, we don't actually know how to process our own anger, right? Because when you out here like, you suck, and I hope that, bad things happen, those are not things you need to ever say to anybody. You can write about it in your journal, right? You can scream about it in your room. And that's important, to allow those feelings to move through your body and feel them, so that when you show up in the conversation, all that other stuff, that personal stuff has been handled, and now we can sit here and talk about the interpersonal issues, the conflict that is at hand, and like the feelings that I have processed and now I'm bringing to you. And it's not to say you always got to be together when you bring your feelings to somebody. However, if you're feeling like vindictive and enraged, it's probably not the time to have this like heart-based conversation.
So Dara had a question.
A really good question. Yeah.
Like, how do y'all define a grudge?
Grudge and what qualifies?
I feel like that differs depending on the person. But what I think about for me in terms of a grudge, I think it's a hole in communication that has gone on for a period of time without just like, I don't know. It's like, I feel like there's a lot of indirectness when I think about grudges. I think it's like something happened and there has been little or insignificant direct communication about what has happened and what has caused feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, then you are becoming now entrenched to your own mind about your thoughts about what has happened without that direct communication. And then you start to make it, you attribute personal things to that person or whatever. The depth of it varies from person to person. But that's my take on a grudge.
So you said a hole in conversation that has not been addressed.
Mm-hmm.
It continues to not be addressed.
Yeah, because then I think about the point to it getting to like a grudge, I think is from that lack of communication that allows it to just like grow.
Almost like a festering. Yeah, that resonates. What I was thinking about, when I think about a grudge, I think about baggage. And like, I think about you like packing up a suitcase full of stuff and then bringing it with you everywhere. It's kind of what I imagine. Because I think we all carry things. We all carry baggage, emotional baggage. I think living in a physical vessel do that. And when I think about grudges, I'm thinking about emotions that are unprocessed and like haven't been acknowledged, haven't been validated by yourself. Maybe I don't know, I don't know, because sometimes it's by yourself, but sometimes it is that we want to be acknowledged by another person. But what resonates about what you're saying for sure is this aspect of not actually addressing the thing head on. So whether it's baggage or a hole in the conversation, I think it's something that you really want to talk about or that is important enough, that has created enough emphasis and impact in your life that it should be addressed, or you feel that it is something that would be beneficial and would release energy if it was addressed, but it's not being addressed. That's kind of what I think about with grudges. Because I do think it's like, I don't think it's always conscious.
Yeah.
And I think even when you are made conscious of it, it can be challenging to release. Because I think you can let go of a grudge on your own, right? Because I don't think you have to have that conversation with another person to be able to release that. Yeah, but I don't have it clear together, but there's this like really like not letting go aspect of it, and like a choice to hold on to it too.
Yeah.
There's something you said earlier that made me think about that. Dang, I can't recall.
All you know is life holding on to this thing.
Yes,
so, like,
yes.
Giving yourself that permission to envision the life that looks like with this thing being let go.
Yes, and I think also I think a lot of times with grudges, we tend to build assumptions on top of it and feelings on top of it. So if you remove that grudge, everything's gonna come tumbling down, right? So for instance, if somebody was a dickhead to you and you're holding grudge, because there's a difference between being like, I know you have revealed to me who you are, so I'm gonna move different, and holding a grudge, right? And I guess the nuance of the difference there is like having a particular emotional reaction every time you see that person, and it could be triggered, right? And then also like, I guess I'm thinking, what is like, how tied are grudges and triggers? I think they're different. I think they're different. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Wait.
Grudges and triggers? I feel like grudges are a little bit more conscious.
Yeah.
I think grudges are more conscious. Because I think triggers can happen.
Yeah, I think the indirectness of that's why I thought about the indirectness of triggers. I just like something said that connects to a certain, you like, oh, like,
yeah, and then boom, yeah. Versus a grudge, I feel like you got to bring up a grudge, low key, or you have solidified it so much inside you that it's now become a part of your like personality to feel a particular thing about a particular person when that's not how people are. Yeah, I feel like every time I look at you, I'm mad. Like that sounds like a choice.
What Nate says, how did you learn how to move through your grudges so quickly? I'm gonna start with me because I like to speak.
Right, that's for you. Because how do I move through my grudges quickly? I don't know.
You know, I really think about, honestly, I think about so much of like, as I move through my feeling process and my feelings, I'm like, yo, like at the end of the day, it's all love towards this person. It may, again, I want them to be like, because I just think about sometimes with these grudges, it's why did this thing make me feel the way that it did? So I almost try to get to the root of like, why did this thing personally like hurt my feelings as much as it did? So I think I quickly try to get to that. Because you look at the action, you be like, oh, why did this hurt me as much as it did? Or why did it make me feel such a way as much as it did? And then when I get to that, I be like, yo, is it really that deep?
And I have a question for you. How do you make a difference between like invalidating your feelings and being like, is it that deep?
I think about the principle of whatever that is. You know, I think about what was done, you know? could this have been really intentional and methodical, and I feel that, and that's why I'm feeling as intensely as it is? Or was this someone who like may have been a little bit like careless with this particular decision, and they just need support on how to better handle similar situations?
Mm. And something you say too that I just thought when you said that is also patterns, right? Because if you keep making the same careless decision, now that's a trend, though.
That's what I'm saying. I pay attention with,
Yeah.
again, maybe this is a naive part of myself, but I'm like, the mistake doesn't define you, but when I sort of like bring it up and am looking for you not to do that again, when you do it, fool me once, shame on who, and then like fool me twice, that's shame on me, and you feel that shame, and then you have to decide to move differently as a result of that. It's like I brought it up, I see the same mistakes being repeated again, I'm bringing this up, and now I have to move differently. And again, it's not like there's no hope that this person has the capability of changes, but your series of decisions has like consecutively made me feel these feelings that are rather negative. And I brought it up once. I didn't see a level of response to me communicating that. And as a result, I have to decide to move differently. So I do that, and like I go through all of that. I would say that's how I move through Grudges. It's just I think about so many people dying this year, to be honest. People dying on the like just growing up, and you see people vanish before your eyes, and it'd be like, what would I want my last interaction with whoever person to be? If I'm dealing with like someone closer to me. It's like, what would I want that last interaction to be? As long as it was honest, and they ain't gotta be one of them, series finales of Fresh Prince. Cause again, that's a want. That's a want. But it's like, it's just like, yo, I was honest. And you hope that you encourage that in the other people around you, that regardless of what comes of that, that was as close as you could have gotten to it.
Wow. There's so much compassion in your response, and just even in in being inexperienced with you in conflict, but also in hearing you just break down your thought process around it. It's so tender, and I really appreciate the compassion. But I think so often when we get hurt, it's hard to like. I think it's sometimes it's all about us, and other times it's like trying to understand why that other person did a thing versus this question. And I wrote it down. Why did it hurt me as much as it did? It makes me think of like, why did you say that in the first place when we were talking about being impeccable with your word? And this like, why are you feeling the feels? And it's not to like invalidate the feels, but like, what about this is firing off a particular thing in it? And I feel like when you really center this curiosity of like, why am I feeling this way? It opens you up to a whole new world of communication and like what is possible to even try to convey to another person. So thank you for sharing that.
No problem. And what it swarms down to with all this, you'd be like, oh shit, I'm doing a lot of overthinking right now. That's what you like you like, yo, my mind is running a miles a minute.
Right.
And then it's just like, all right, you've recognized that a lot of thoughts are swarming at once. How do we move forward? But again, that process looks different for other people, and sometimes that lasts longer. So make sure we're considerate and acknowledge that. I'm blessed with just the ability to kind of process things a little bit quickly in that regard. But yeah, this.
Yeah.
We overthink, and it's just like, what is in front of us? What is being presented to us?
Right now, live time.
Right.
Right, and I think that's the thing about Grudges is like there's something that's being presented to us live time, and we are either seeing it or not seeing it due to whatever we're coming into this conversation with, these preconceived holdings almost. And it keeps you from being able to move and react in the present.
Yeah.
I feel like grudges are just like attachments to the past. That might be the simplest way for me to describe it. So how do I move through grudges? Well, okay, I guess that question was for you because I don't move through grudges so quickly. It depends. It really
I
depends.
appreciate you keeping it real though.
Yeah, I'm
Yo, like,
right. I'm not gonna lie. Like, in case anybody's ever, people are always like, "Oh, what is their chart?" I'm like, I'm a Scorpio 7 times over. Okay, my moon is Leo, my rising is Virgo. For anybody who's curious,
and
and I just bring that up because I always think those are such fiery and watery signs. But
I have to acknowledge my humanity too. I had to acknowledge a really big grudge in order for those floodgates to release, and I thank you for that. It was like I just like grudge with my pops, like
mm,
feeling a way about how I grew up and things that he's done to make me feel a way, and it brought up a lot of like in me,
mm,
and I had to confront that.
mm-hmm,
Cause then it just be like, you know, cause you want a certain relationship with your pops and you're almost frustrated with the fact that you don't have the one that you want. And then it's coming to realize and peel under of like, that's a want, you know? And he had me at such a later age in his life. He already had a bunch of kids. So then there's so many different experiences that are infused with that. And
mm-hmm,
as much as I could feel a way about what transpired, if he died tomorrow, I would feel sad. And I had
mm-hmm,
that. It was like, yo, as much as you feel X, Y, and Z, if this person wasn't here anymore, you would feel some type of way.
mm,
So, and you would wish that your last interaction with this person was truthful and honest and whatever the case may be. So I had to confront that in order to get better at handling the rest. So want to acknowledge that I got my own stuff. It's not like I just like, I'm like, yeah, it's whatever. It's like, you know, I felt ways about this. I process negative thoughts too. It's not always loud because as mad as I am, I don't like communicating to people in a way that I wouldn't want to be communicated with. As mad as I
mm-hmm,
angry as I could be, I think I learned that from my moms and the people that
mm-hmm.
around, but it's like I rarely get to that like I need to express myself in that way. So my grudges might just be like it just look different.
Mm-hmm. When you were saying that, I thought of two things. So first, I was reading this thing from Dara. Well, Google says that it's a persistent feeling of ill will or resentment resulting from a past insult or injury. There's this documentary that I will send to you, Raheem, because I think you would enjoy it. I feel like I've mentioned it like 1,000 times, but E-motion. It's on Gaia, and it means it's about emotion and how it's energy and motion, right? That's what emotions are, and or not emotion, and that's where trapped emotions are. And there's this guy, Dr. Joe Dispenza, who's amazing. He has a show also on Gaia about like improving the elasticity of your brain. He's a neuroscientist. But he says, an emotion that's held over several hours is a mood, right? An emotion or a mood that is sustained over like a longer period of time is like a temperament, right? So if you see somebody who's angry, oh yeah, he's angry. Why is he so angry? Oh yeah, something happened like 8 months ago, and he's mad about it, right? And then it can become over time, even longer, a personality trait. And I was like, it's so crazy, energy, like just the emotion to mood to temperament to personality trait, depending on how you choose to relate to that emotion and how you choose to. And he was saying something about if that reaction just keeps happening and you don't question it, you don't challenge it, that is going to be part of the thing. And I'm thinking that's kind of what grudges are too. I thought about that when Dara wrote that thing while you were speaking. But the other thing that's more tied to what you're saying about dads, that was huge for me too. And I think one of the biggest grudges I released of my life was against my dad. I had asked a question during a workshop yesterday that was like, what's something you have now that you never thought you would have, or that you never thought you could have had? And I was like, I feel like I don't really honor this as much and I don't celebrate it as much as I can. But like this relationship with my dad is definitely something I never would have thought I had in my entire life because I was holding grudges. I was holding grudges and then I was expecting him to hold grudges. So I was like, I would put down the grudge, but he would still be holding the grudge. And then I would try to interact with him and then his grudge would come up and I'd be like, and this is why I got grudges. So I guess I didn't put it down. Right. And we would just be doing this so much. And at the root of it was just we were really reacting to past selves and also reacting to like thoughts that we, like you were saying, the overthinking, just reacting to thoughts that we thought the other person was thinking about us. Or like how we felt and how it was never addressed. So all these things are kind of coming up as I think about this relationship with my dad. And that question you asked of if this man died, how would you feel? You would be sad. The reason I realized, wait a second, Gary, I think you need to actually address this is because I was like, I don't know how I would feel if he died.
Mm.
And that had me real bent out of shape to think like, I don't know how I would feel. Because it's one thing to be like, oh, I wouldn't feel nothing, right? Or like, I would feel sad or I would feel regretful. But to be like, I really don't know. And when I was writing about that, this was about a year ago, I wrote about it, wrote him this like scathing letter. Scathing. And I was going to read it to him. But then I read it. I read it to Nate at the time, and he was so like, "Oh my goodness!" Like, I'm like, "Wow, those feelings." He like, I don't even know what I would do if I got that. And I was like, "Oh, you're right." Like, then I was like, "What am I really trying to get from sending him this letter?" Because as I was reading it, I was like, "If I want connection, this letter is not going to build connection. It's going to fulfill the prophecy that I am speaking on, which is that we will never be together. And my grudges are, accurate." And then it was in reading the letter and writing another letter that I was like, yo, I read that letter and it broke my heart to read that letter. And that's how I feel. And then realizing like I want a relationship with you and I just don't know how to go about that. And I don't know where to begin. And I don't know nothing about what it takes, but all I know is that like I want something different from what we currently have. And I think that's why I was able to let go of my grudge, was realizing that I was really hurt. And that secretly I actually wanted a relationship with this person. And I felt that it was impossible to have the two. And now we're in a totally different place because I told him that. We had a big ass conversation, I remember last year, and just cried about it. He cried to me, I cried to him, and I cried first because I was just like, like I just feel like I've been holding so much shit against you. I can't even react to who you are in my life right now, presently. Like I'm always thinking everything is rooted in some shit from the past because I feel like I have a story of you don't like me, you don't want me. So anything you say that feels like rejection, I'm like, oh well, I'm gonna just put it in the rejection box. And it was just so powerful and as I was talking to him and finally really stepping outside of my experience and being like, what is it like to be a father that believes that their child hates them? And it's like, and it's not to be like, oh, you go cut him slack, oh, like, oh, his feelings, but no, like truly, that feels crazy because I know I have felt hated. Or I feel like people feel a way about me, and I know that's not true. It's just how I feel in my self-talk. But to know that somebody out here in the world actually like talking shit about you, and that's your blood, and you brought them into the space, and it's not even on the like, I brought you here, I can take you out, but just like you contributed to this person's life, and they don't see your contribution because of experiences and how and like I just felt so bad thinking about how I have done things and never been and felt like I've often been forgiven, and how he's carrying this like non-forgiveness from himself and how I'm also holding him in that. And thinking all the way back to the start of the conversation, practicing what you preach, like I want to be like I got it on my body. I can't be out here.
Because this world's trying to harden you. And I think about holding grudges. I'm like, that's that colonizing mentality. And working against that is an act of rebellion.
An act of rebellion.
And it's like, yo, it's hard though, because it's so easy to do that, to perform in the colonizer's mentality.
Yeah.
It's easy to do that. but it's hard to be like, yo, can we find a way to still coexist, to really coexist, in which you're recognizing my truth and I can recognize yours. We're different people, but I'm giving. I wanna see different for our relationship. And we may have gotten a straight X, Y, and Z place, but it's like, regardless of how we move forward and what capacity you are in my life, I want you in my life in a positive way.
Yes.
Not something
Yes.
bring me suffering and pain every time I think of you. Something that's like, yo, oh, that's my brother, that's my sister, that's my father, that's someone that I'm looking to build with.
Mm.
And work against this colonizing mentality of holding grudges.
Mm-hmm.
Because then it's like that other person has feelings too, like you said. So it's like, have I taken the time to listen to their side of the things that has been happening too?
Right.
And if they don't have it, then that's revealing something else. But that's another.
Right.
It's like, because at some point, you again that realness has to come in, because there has to be some sort of effort, some sort of acknowledgement on one end. So.
Dang, when you were just saying that earlier piece, do you remember what you were saying? Just now.
What?
When I went like this, I forgot. There was something I was gonna reference something that you actually said before
And
that I think about often.
grudges and stuff, like the college
About grudges.
and like
Colonizers.
the white man.
Oh, yes, I remember. You are all often that, and something that it's funny because I feel like we used to speak about this a lot in college when I was like tripping the fuck out all the time. But just talking about how we are different in every moment, like moment to moment to moment, it's a new moment. And so when I think about grudges, that's real crazy because you're really bringing a thing with you moment to moment to moment. And so, and I think about when you say about like it's the colonizer's tools and it's white supremacy to really be in a grudge. It's like you really don't allow people to change. You solidify them in this identity of who they are. And this is also who you are. You are limiting both of you and moving in that way. Versus, forgiveness and grace is a totally different emotion to like accept people's constantly changing multidimensionality and believe in the possibility that like the new moment holds a new potential, which is
My permission. You gotta give the permission. You gotta give that permission.
yeah. Yeah.
I'm glad we got like 3 minutes to like breathe, because we always be getting off these like
All right, bye. Like drop it on you.
Are there any particular questions? I want to just give some space for that as well. Yeah.
Right. I see Gavin here says, if we being honest, some of the pain comes from their absence in our lives. And I know Dara had a comment earlier that I didn't read aloud. I think I only partly read it because I was talking. Because I'm thinking I don't have grudges with people really, but I do with the happening around the person. Or with them having around the person. So I learned a way to be based off of that person's actions and my response to that. Dara, can you explain that a little bit? Because what I'm reading from that is like basing our actions off of basing our responses off of another person's action. I mean, yeah, that's like letting things be revealed to you, I mean, you react, but I think if you have a preconceived notion of how that person is going to respond, then that changes that dynamic. But yeah, are there any questions? Do you have any questions, Rob? Right.
So I think I have a question for you. Is what practices do you go? Because I think about this idea of sort of like we are suffering, like feelings that is down, and I think people forget the fact that like the tools to our own suffering, but the tools to us getting out of that feeling of suffering are both within us. And
yes.
I think I was going to ask about your practices to sort of get to that point of releasing of them.
Yeah. Yesterday was, I guess, a pretty good example.
I'm sorry. I asked a loaded question. Sorry, my bad.
No, you're good. You're good. Okay, I have like a minute, so I'm gonna try to get in here. The thing that happened most recently that I can think about is yesterday my workshop. I had my first like not great workshop because I feel like I prepare my workshops very intentionally. And there's also times where I'm not like feeling it all the way. And so that's what I was in that moment where I was like, I'm feeling kind of off about it. So I just left feeling really incomplete, feeling like I didn't do my best and usually those thoughts bring on a slew of just like shitting on myself, right? And just like, but before we even could get to that point, I just let myself cry. Like I felt myself needing to cry and I felt the tears welling up and I just sat there and just cried and like allowed myself to feel as much as I needed to cry, like curl up, hide my face. And instead of being like, no, don't do that, like, show yourself, like, get out of there. Like, no, I was like, if this is how you feel, like, do the things. And I think that's been one of my most powerful tools is really holding the space for me to just like feel my feelings in its fullness. And like writing about it often helps.
You got to
Talking about it.
on yourself before you go release grudge with others. Because you got some people got some grudges with themselves. And it's like
most of the grudges are with ourselves, if we be honest.
You gotta talk.
Right. So that's been a really big like strategy of mine and tools that have been just like the space piece. And like it was the first time I wrote a post about it, and I know you mentioned we spoke about it, but I really was like, it was the first time in my mind where it was like, this is part of the process. And like this is, you're doing, and then I wrote a comment like, I don't feel ashamed about this because I am doing my best, even though I wasn't prepared, right? So it felt weird to be like, oh, I'm doing my best because I didn't feel prepared. However, I'm doing my best overall in my vision, and I'm doing workshops every day. It's bound and every single workshop was fire. Come on, one workshop it happens, and you weren't prepared, so it's okay. And now you actually, and the thing is. And the reason, and I was able to like, okay, you have these personal feelings, but remember what you said in the workshop. In the workshop, I started by being like, this is experimental. Like, this is the first time I'm ever running this. So like, y'all are guinea pigs and I appreciate you. And I said that, so I was impeccable with my word. And I actually and the person who attended, one of them, responded to my email because I was honest about it. I was like, I'm feeling crazy after that. Like, I feel like I played you, all of these things. And I was able to be honest, and also having reflected with myself, I didn't expect his email, his response to relieve me because I was already handling my feelings before that. And I think that's another tool I've had. It's like removing learning to care for myself and not using other people's feeling, like other people's validation or even them holding space for me to be the reason that I feel better, because I need to hold space for myself first. And because I used to feel like I would feel shitty about people not holding space for me, and then now I'm mad about the thing, and I'm mad that you're not holding space because I wanted you to do the thing, but it's not, you're not supposed to do the thing. You're supposed to be there if you want to be aside, hold the back, hand on the shoulder. If I don't need that, I don't need that, but like removing my dependence on people in that way. And that's been so powerful. And then being honest, saying the thing. And then, yeah, he responded and he was like, yeah, you did say it was experimental. And I was like, see? And he's like, so you got what you asked for, which is feedback. So I've been noticing the things I ask for, especially. Because I noticed that I'd be asking for stuff and get it and then be mad.
No, I want that, but I said I want that. That voice, but I think about that voice talking back to you. You like, damn, I said I wanted that though. And then you come to realize it might be what you it's not what you need though.
Oh, it's not what you need.
And then it comes full circle and then you check yourself. Oh my God, what?
Yes, absolutely. I've been checking myself a lot. Because I realized a lot of people don't check me, right? And like, that's cute, I suppose. It's really not. It's not cute at all. Like, I want to be checked, right? And so like, how do you even respond to yourself checking you, Gary? Maybe that's why people don't check you. So
go play chess, Gary. You better go get checkmate.
No.
All right.
Also, did you see? I think I have a new thing on IGTV where I can or our IG lives where I can go past the hour. I don't know because it's past the hour. I mean, let's not flex. We can, yeah. But I wanted to read the comments before we go too.
Got things to do. Come on, because I love. We can do this all day to keep it 100. Really? But we know we know we gotta get back in the lab and cook something.
Oh, Gavin had asked a question though before we go, and I guess we could say that as a closing. But also before that, Dara said, "Men verbally harass you. You learn men in public might be dangerous, so you move with that information / lesson whenever you got out."
The things we ask for don't always come in the packages we expect them to arrive in.
Mm. I love that.
All right, so
So wrap up, yeah. So we talked today. We had opened up this conversation, kind of checking in where we are at the end of the year, and what has been on our spirit. It's been a really intense year, individually and then also as a collective. Like I feel like this is the craziest we've all been through together. And then we were talking about Grudges, is where we had initially started. And how did we start that? I don't even.
because I was just talking about the want to release them and confronting them head on.
Yes, right, because you wanted to end the year, right? Because we want to end the year, start the next one without the shit from the year before, or the blessings versus the burdens.
Because a lot of people been coming together and squashing beefs, like on the celebrity front, whatever. But it's just like, yo, is it really that deep?
Is it really that deep? Why did it hurt me as much as it did? Ask yourself that next time you feel away, y'all. And see if you can find the principle as to what hurt you about it. Yeah.
I think that's a perfect way to close. Thank you all so much for just coming through and showing love. I hope, if anything, you took something away from it. And just thank you so much for being a part of this conversation. We just like to release these things.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you all so much. Catch us every Sunday, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I will be posting this. I'm also going to start posting them on YouTube because I just downloaded them onto my handy dandy hard drive.
I was going to put this song though too. Bag lady. So it's like,
Hey.
yo, enjoy your Sunday, y'all.
Yes.
Because they get heavy.
Bye, Ra. Thank you.